Bapak Ibu hadirin peserta Temu Ilmiah Nasional 2021 Fakultas Psikologi Universitas Pancasila. Semuanya apa kabar? Masih semangat? Salamnya dulu. Salam Pancasila. Salam Pancasila Merdeka. Baik, senang sekali saat ini perkenalkan saya Jaihan Faranabila yang akan memandu sesi talk show kali ini dengan Bapak Roni Adikarya PhD. Semuanya sebelumnya, tapi saya ingin menyapa dulu nih Pak Roni. Pak Roni sebagai UN representative di Hawaii, Bapak apa kabar ya? Saat ini sedang di Hawaii ya Pak ya?
Tuh, saya
iya,
bukan
Pak. Tadi saya
representative dari United States, tapi dari United Nations.
Oh iya, mohon maaf Pak, dari United Nations. Baik. Pak, tadi sempat juga ada disebutkan pernah tinggal di Palo Alto ya Pak, Silicon Valley, betul Pak?
Lama di sana memang, di Silicon Valley, saya dari Stanford.
Wah, keren banget Pak itu. Mimpi saya juga Pak, pengen tinggal di Silicon Valley, mudah-mudahan nanti bisa tetanggaan sama Mark Zuckerberg juga ya Pak ya, amin. Sore ini, sesi talk show kali ini akan bertemakan disrupsi era digital dan perubahan tingkah laku serta peran dan tantangan psikologi, terutama ilmu komunikasi, dalam menghadapi perubahan era digital. Sedikit pengantar terlebih dahulu, revolusi industri 4.0 seperti yang kita tahu selama ini telah membuat perubahan teknologi terjadi secara cepat, sehingga kita menjadi lebih dekat dengan digital teknologi. Era digital membuat literasi berkembang dengan sangat mudah, tapi tidak lepas juga terhadap penyalahgunaan dari teknologi dan digital membuat peran dan tantangan setiap bidang ilmu untuk berkontribusi dalam menghadapi dampak dari perubahan cepat digitalisasi saat ini. Dan teman-teman mungkin familiar dengan Instagram, Facebook, dan lain sebagainya, itu sangat erat sekali kaitannya dengan kehidupan kita sehari-hari. Dan menurut survei juga dikatakan bahwa 93,7% generasi Z yang lahir di tahun 1998 sampai dengan 2010 itu sangat akrab sekali dengan teknologi, membuat ketergantungan teknologi juga menghasilkan beberapa masalah seperti hoax, kemudian muncul konflik di dunia digital. Nah, saat ini kita akan mendengarkan insight dari Bapak Roni Adikarya PhD mengenai apa saja sih peran dan tantangan psikologi, terutama ilmu komunikasi, psikologi di bidang ilmu komunikasi dalam menghadapi era digitalisasi dan disrupsi teknologi. Sebelumnya saya ingin menyampaikan terlebih dahulu bahwa nanti akan ada sesi tanya jawab dari para hadirin peserta, dan mungkin pada saat penyampaian materi para hadirin dipersilahkan untuk menyampaikan pertanyaan melalui chat box, dan nanti pada sesi pertanyaan saya akan membacakan pertanyaannya, dan langsung saja sebelum kita ke materi kita akan menampilkan profil dari Bapak Roni Adikarya PhD. Dipersilahkan.
Speaker at international conference and has given public lecture in at least 28 countries. Originally from Indonesia, Dr. Adikarya since 1972 has undertaken professional assignment and officially mission in 52 countries and traveled to a total of 103 countries. He has written a book published in Germany, Italy, England, USA, Singapore, Malaysia, and many other publications. Dr. Adikarya has served various international advisory boards or committees of international development organizations in Singapore, Thailand, England, Switzerland, Indonesia, USA, and etc. He obtained his master from Cornell University and PhD from Stanford University. He moved his residence in early 2021 from the Silicon Valley of California to Honolulu, Hawaii, where he also served as a member of the board of directors of the Hawaii Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and the executive board of the East-West Center Association.
Mohon maaf, baik sudah ditayangkan video profil dari Bapak Roni Adikarya PhD, dan selanjutnya saya ingin bertanya apakah sudah siap Pak untuk menyampaikan materi kali ini Pak?
Ya, karena waktunya terbatas, ditayangkan dulu videonya, itu bagian pertama dari presentasi saya. Setelah
Baik,
itu
Pak.
nanti saya live dengan PowerPoint. Saya ingin mengatakan bahwa video ini dalam bahasa Inggris, karena waktu saya bicara dengan Pak Dekan, Pak Sony, saya tanya bahasa pengantarnya apa, disarankan untuk pakai bahasa Inggris, walaupun ini national scientific meeting, agar lebih berwarna internasional, katanya sebaiknya pakai bahasa Inggris. Lalu nanti saya di bagian PowerPoint silakan videonya ditayangkan.
Baik, kita sama-sama akan menyaksikan video materi yang diberikan oleh Bapak Roni Adikarya PhD. Mohon tim teknis untuk menampilkan videonya.
Salam sejahtera dan salam sehat bagi kita semua. Aloha from paradise. And Sampurasun. I always open my public address anywhere in the world with Sampurasun. It is a part of a useful local wisdom I inherited from the community where I was born 72 years ago in a city called Bogor in the West Java province of Indonesia. It simply means I ask for permission to talk to you all. And I also ask for forgiveness if what I say is inappropriate or incorrect. The audience are expected to reply with rampes. Yes, rampes, meaning apologies accepted. So, if I talk nonsense today, I'm already forgiven, correct? Good afternoon, The Excellency Bapak Johnny Plate, the Minister of Information and Communication, the Chair of the LL Dikti, Professor Agus, the Rector of the University of Pancasila, Professor Edi Tut Hendratno, also the Dean of the Psychology Faculty, Dr. Silverius Suharso, distinguished speakers, and esteemed participants. It gives me a great pleasure to participate in this important and timely national scientific meeting organized by the Universitas Pancasila in Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm honored and grateful to be invited personally by Pak Sony Suharso, the Dean of the Faculty of Psychology of the University of Pancasila, to be a speaker at this meeting. I also want to pay tribute to the organizing committee chaired by the capable Ibu Aisyah and her team for the hard work and detailed preparations in planning and implementing this meeting. So, why are we meeting here and now? Is it in order for us to survive the new normal era on Earth? Can we survive? To me, the years 2020 and 2021 are the years of the perfect storm. And this questions our common future. No wonder Elon Musk, Richard Branson, and Jeff Bezos, after creating major disruption on Earth, are now pathfinding and trailblazing to explore life on Mars. So, what are we doing here? We are facing problems. In the midst of an already disruptive decade of 2010, we enter the new decade of 2020. And what do we find? The chaos of digital technology and COVID-19 pandemic dictating and altering our life, attitude, and behavior. Globally, mankind and institutions are forced to change their behavior and operations almost overnight. It is not an evolutionary change. It is a revolutionary alteration of human behavior in many ways, especially in education and communication, to ensure health, safety, and life survival. For more than 1.5 years and continuing, people are disturbed not only by digital technology revolution. They witness so much miseries, illness, and untimely deaths due to COVID-19. They undergo significant disruptions in their own daily lifestyles, social interactions, and behavior. Many have sacrificed their career and lost their jobs. Students' education process is disrupted, and it is questionable in its effective operations, quality, and competence outcomes. Not to mention the macroeconomic and social impacts at the national level and context. For this meeting, I will only focus on few of the impacts affecting education and communication processes, which may have some psychological implications and challenges. As I am a storyteller, my education method is not to give solutions, but only to raise relevant issues and to suggest what to think about. My presentation will give some keywords or tech words which you will need to Google it yourself for more elaboration, because I cannot explain everything in detail in this presentation of about an hour or so. Solutions must be developed according to specific context, specific needs, and based on the cultural wisdom in the area where the problem needs to be solved and by those who are most concerned with. The video presentation and also the PowerPoint materials that I will use towards the end of my presentation will all be available in my Dropbox. I will show and give you the link later for you to review at your own time and also to download. During this presentation, I will only focus on 3 main issues that I want you to think about. And here they are. The first issue, digital technology meets COVID-19. Basically, what I want to say is virtual behavior is here to stay. And we'll talk about the challenges because of the inadequate educational support, creating increased responsibility to parents and students, in addition to the formal education support that they will get from the educational authorities. But certainly, there must be some changes in the way they learn and the way they behave and in the way they conduct their lifestyles at home. The second issue that I need to discuss and share with you is the artificial intelligence meeting netizens. And this is a case where we are all programmed to be addicted. And here I'm going to talk about challenges about the effects on personalized communication and social behavior. And there are a lot of psychological implications in that. And the third, we're going to talk about disruption era careers and the digital divide. And this creates generational conflicts. And the challenges is because there are this incompatible perception and expectation that creates problems between parents and children. And therefore, there are this incompatible perception and expectation among parents versus their children's aspiration and behavior. In addition to that, I'm going also to discuss 3 main concepts that will be closely related to the issues I talked about just now. So the 3 main concepts are the following. The one related to social psychology is what we're going to discuss is the inoculation theory and the work by William McGuire. The second concept that also is related to social psychology is a new concept, a new theory developed by my alma mater at Stanford by Professor B.J. Bok, and he called it captology. And this is an interesting phenomenon, a new development where we talk about the relationship between persuasion, psychology, and its interface with computer technology and computer programming. And finally, the third concept that we're going to talk about is again fairly new, and this has to do with educational psychology, and I call it perception AI, or artificial intelligence, that is related to deep learning, machine learning. And I'm going to use the case that is advocated by Kai-Fu Lee, who is now in Silicon Valley, in China, and many parts of the world are being studied carefully because he has come up with very interesting and yet controversial assertions. Okay? Okay, let's start with the first main issue that we need to think about. And that is digital technology meets COVID-19. Virtual behavior is here to stay. For more than 50 years, people like me and many others globally have advocated and promoted with very little success the application of communication technologies and strategies for massive distance learning, but not very successful, as I said earlier. Lack of competency in distance learning management, and more importantly, the psychological resistance are the main constraints for wide-scale use of distance learning technologies and strategies, especially for education. Never before in history has the rate of the diffusion of innovation and technology adoption been faster than today in the use of virtual and digital technology tools for education and communication. The slow process of adoption of such technology in the last 50 years were transformed almost overnight, mainly due to the COVID-19. For instance, Zoom users increased in just 3 months, January to April 2020, from 20 million to 300 million users globally, used not only by educators, but by the public at large. The number of Zoom users today is obviously even much higher. Cisco also reported a total of 300 million WebEx users, and it saw sign-ups to about 240,000 users in just 24-hour period. Imagine how widespread the use of virtual communication these days are. So, what are some of the implications of such a revolutionary change to virtual education and communication? The first thing is the problem of inadequate educational support. And because of this, parents and students will need to have an increased responsibility in their own educational process. In addition of whatever the formal education system could provide them with. Due to the overnight imperative of switching to virtual education, most institutions, educators, and their curriculum are not ready. many are not offering suitable, effective, and efficient remote learning strategies and methods. And this provides very difficult problems for both the educators as well as parents and students, because the quality of education is at stake. Another problem is virtual communication and educational technologies may not be accessible to all learners because there may be unequal availability or quality of infrastructure facilities, such as internet connectivity, the equipment needed for learning, such as mobile devices, laptops, etc., because of socioeconomic constraints, as well as the incompetency of the support systems. And here, of course, parents, again, will need to rescue a situation like this in order to support their children's education at home. And this has been going on since early last year, 2020, and continuing, I don't know until when. Larger and more well-endowed educational institutions, however, may be able to weather and manage the economic and financial pressures better than smaller institutions. The larger and more established learning organizations may transform better and adjust easier due to the changing modalities to virtual education and the inefficiencies of underutilized assets. However, the above situation will widen the digital gap between educators and learners and among education institutions and their learners. So, based on what I've said earlier, here are some of the challenges. Virtual communication behavior in digital technology application through mobile devices especially will be here to stay even post-COVID-19 era. And therefore, ensuring readiness and the fundamental ability of society, especially parents and educators, of their digital literacy and technological application skills in the effective use of mobile and computer devices will be of highest priority. Parents will need to adjust their professional and personal activities and lifestyles, and of course, their time schedule to accommodate the new task of increased participation in their children's education. More importantly, they need to master the relevant pedagogical methods in educational psychology, including time management, stress management, and learning assessment management. Educators need also to reform their learning curricula, their virtual and hybrid learning methods based on the new psychology of mediated collaborative education and synchronous and asynchronous virtual communication. And this should have been done a couple of years back, because the younger generation have a different habit of communication and education and learning than the previous generations. Because of all that, education policymakers, decision makers, and administrators should creatively and efficiently transform the underutilized education facilities and infrastructure due to the hybrid or virtual education modalities into more monetizable ventures. So it is not only curriculum reform or curriculum adjustment that is needed, but also transforming the educational facilities, making it more efficient. Because of such reforms in terms of increasing the cost effectiveness, cost efficiency of the facilities, of the infrastructure, of the school and educational system, hopefully revenues can be generated or saved, and it should be used to cross-subsidize resource-poor families and students with needed communication technology tools to narrow the digital technology gap among students and the different economic status, as I mentioned earlier. And hopefully, because of that, there can also be a better and more efficient operation and financial management, resulting in the cost of education becoming cheaper for all. The question is, how can such competency be offered and by whom? All right, let's now discuss the second main issues to consider. Artificial intelligence meets netizens, people who using the internet, and almost all nowadays. And this is the case where we are all programmed to be addicted. There is a proliferation of mobile devices, as you know, especially smartphones and their abundant apps and mobile devices. Over the years, especially during the pandemic, most netizens are dependent on their mobile devices, especially children who are isolated from their physical and social interactions with their friends. So we now see a new problem, not of people obesity, but something more dangerous, and that is infobesity. Many of us are now suffering from IAD. And what is that? Internet addiction disorder. Now, in addition of all that, we are facing another big issue or constraints. Due to the democratization of communication and education, everyone can generate and distribute information on any subject to anywhere around the world. Various communication methods and information packaging using artificial intelligence-based algorithm can now develop for viral distribution through multiple platforms. Consequently, we have an infodemic, which is often misused for hoax, fake, and hate information, and also other vested interested disinformation and misinformation activities. Such communication can create stress, conflict, fears, uncertainties, anxieties, and other mental disorder. What are some of the implications of such a revolutionary change in such a dependency on mobile devices and non-personalized communication? So, in my opinion, here are some of the effects on personalized communication and social behavior. Due to the present preference for impersonalized mediated communication, fewer personal socialization opportunities may create less social behavior and fewer personal interactions. Communal and group cohesion and solidarity and empathy may also decrease. To properly manage the onslaught of viral infodemic, netizens must be able to critically assess and verify valid and credible information from hoax, fake, and hate, disinformation, and misinformation. Such disinformation can instill false knowledge, alter attitude, and affect behavioral change based on manipulated facts and corrupted ideas. To increase the problem of the dependency on mobile devices, many people have become worrisome, as for many, the problem is the addiction of children, which are using the smartphones and tablets that is highly contaminated with dopamine and therefore is highly addictive. Many apps have been developed using sophisticated software technologies that produces dopamine stimuli for users, especially children, through the use of games, among other applications. Also, among adults, in the past, we used to check our phones only when there is a ding sound. That means there is a message coming in. But these days, every 5 minutes, you check your phone, whether or not there is a message. You keep on checking and checking, hoping there's something, or you're looking for new information, navigating the internet, Googling something. But you need to have the apps and you are glued to this device without knowing that you are addicted, because it produces and gives you the dopamine stimuli. Another consequence of digital technology innovation is the need to accumulate and use data, which many now consider the most valuable asset and capital in the disruption era enterprises. Data and information is now the new oil in the era of disruption and super smart society 5.0, as it is needed for big data analytics and other artificial intelligence or AI-based applications. However, such intensive and extensive search and collection of data and information have created many controversies regarding privacy of personal data, information rights, control, and communication regulations. So based on what I have said so far, here are some of the challenges. Virtual and digital technology application behavior in impersonal communication and social interaction will also be here to stay, even after the COVID-19 period. New user-friendly and economical AI technologies, practical online collaborative and community group networking applications will be needed for increasing social and family communication and communal interactions. Netizens using virtual communication technologies should also be digitally literate and master the competencies of being astute and critical communicators in processing whatever information or communication they receive or they read every day. More importantly, society now should not only get COVID vaccines, but people should also be given communication inoculation to manage and control the infodemic disinformation. To mitigate and minimize the effects of virtual and digital technology communication addiction, netizens and more importantly, policy and decision makers, legislators, regulators, and educators should be aware of and understand the new psychological concept of captology. Parents will need to be re-educated, not only in educational psychology, mentoring or coaching, and multimedia methods, as their role and responsibility in homeschooling for their children will or has increased. School curricula will need to incorporate parents as their educational beneficiaries and clients. The issues of privacy of data and the danger of cyber and digital crimes have created and changed society's behavior on how to share and protect information and data. Another consequence of digital technology innovation is the need to accumulate and use data, which many now consider it the most valuable assets and capital. As I mentioned earlier, data is the new oil in the disruption era and super smart society 5.0, as it is needed for big data analytics in an AI-based application. However, we need to also be using that information for our convenience. And this lies the compromise between convenience and protecting our personal data. So these are the conflict that may create tension, that may create stress, that needs to be mitigated or resolved. The question is, how can such tacit knowledge and data and information be obtained in a fair and justified manner and shared in order to develop strategies and operation for problem-solving programs that benefit everyone and by whom. Now, finally, let me discuss the third main issues that you all should be thinking about. And this is disruption era career and digital divide. And I'm going to discuss about the case of a generational conflict. It may be true that many of the disruptors and young startup entrepreneurs did not reach their goals, especially in becoming unicorn or decacorn. However, some of them have become sources of inspiration and role models for the FANG generation. You know what a FANG generation is? That is the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google generation, the FANG generation of today. Consequently, many of the children, the FANG generation especially, they are digitally literate and they have been exposed to the new opportunities and not more of the same types of career choices needed for the disruption era, which is now, or at least for the next 5 to 7 years. However, many parents are not aware of the new career prospects resulting from the technological changes in the last 5-10 years during the disruption era. And they still persuade their children to pursue studies for safe occupations such as medicine, engineering, accounting, architect, or to work as a civil servant. So what we have here is an incompatible perception and expectations that creates conflict between parents and children. The different perceptions lead to serious and problematic conflicts between children and parents, as I said several times already. Often, the children are technologically savvy and aware of the new emerging needs of the super smart society 5.0, not anymore the 4.0 industrial revolution. In contrast, many of the parents are digitally illiterate and have not been adequately exposed to the changing needs and the types of new professional careers that are needed in the era of disruption, say in the next 5 or 7 years, when their children will enter the workforce. Unfortunately, many parents still impose their insistence and direct or indirect pressures regarding their preferred study program for their children. Consequently, large number of students are not able to develop and maximize their full academic and intellectual potentials based on their own passions, aspiration, and talents. So, what are then some of the challenges of this problematic issue? More effort through public education, briefing sessions should be given to parents regarding the changing marketplace and new career typologies in the next 5 to 7 years for their children. Therefore, educational institutions, schools, and also universities may need to offer special groups and personal counseling sessions for parents especially and children to explore and discuss changes, new demands, and study programs for potential career opportunities in the approaching era of super smart society 5.0. The question is who and how such motivational and futuristic visioning sessions can be conducted to provide motivation and tacit knowledge on changing scenarios and new potential for niche professional career opportunities. Okay? In the next part of my presentation, I will elaborate some important concepts I mentioned thus far as it relates to social psychology and educational psychology using some PowerPoint slide. Okay, we'll go to the next part of my presentation in a minute. Thank you.
Baik, luar biasa sekali. Mungkin bisa dilanjutkan terlebih dahulu, Pak, dengan PowerPoint-nya. Apakah sudah siap,
Boleh.
Pak?
Ya, diberikan saya right untuk men-share screen. Bisa dilihat?
Bisa, Pak.
Bisa, Pak.
Baik, saya akan lanjutkan seperti saya janjikan sebelumnya. Semua materi itu bisa dilihat di Dropbox. Jadi silakan diambil foto. Ini linknya di foto, lalu bisa cari videonya dan juga materi PowerPoint ini. Karena saya tidak bisa terlalu banyak memakan waktu untuk memberikan penjelasan dari semua slides. Slides di sini yang saya akan tayangkan sebenarnya self-explanatory, jadi bisa dipelajari sendiri karena itu memang cara belajar masa ini. Dan juga yang saya berikan seperti saya katakan tadi, saya tidak akan memberikan solusi, tapi hanya memberikan what to think about dan juga tag word, arah dan kata-kata kunci yang bisa dicari di Google. Saya harus memberi kredit kepada banyak kawan-kawan saya, network saya di berbagai penjuru dunia, di mana saya sering bertukar pikiran dengan mereka selama 10 tahun terakhir, bahan-bahan yang saya gunakan di sini dan juga yang saya sudah share di presentasi saya, sebenarnya sudah dibicarakan di berbagai international conferences di banyak negara seperti yang tertera di sini dan juga di banyak universitas di Asia, Afrika, dan juga di Indonesia. Hampir barangkali 40 universitas sudah saya kunjungi dan saya berikan kuliah umum di sana. Listnya sudah ada di situ. Saya tidak akan membicarakan secara detail seperti saya katakan, hanya memberikan saja gambaran apa yang ada di slide di sini dan bisa dipelajari di rumah sendiri. Oke. Tadi sudah saya katakan kita akan bicarakan mengenai 3 masalah. Yang pertama adalah digital technology meet COVID-19, tadi sudah saya bicarakan. Dan juga mengenai program to be addicted, karena banyak kena kecanduan dari dopamin, dan jalan keluarnya salah satunya adalah kaptologi, ilmu psikologi yang dikembangkan di Stanford University oleh Profesor Fogg, dan yang ketiga adalah mengenai sebenarnya artificial intelligence, perception AI, di mana sekarang adanya pertarungan antara China dan the rest of the world di bidang ini. Sebentar saya akan share slides yang akan saya perlihatkan di sini. Seperti tadi saya katakan, saya mohon maaf karena waktu saya meminta pendapat kepada Pak Dekan, Pak Sony, apakah video saya itu baikkan dalam bahasa Inggris atau bahasa Indonesia, katanya lebih baik bahasa Inggris supaya ada sedikit international color di scientific meeting, national scientific meeting hari ini. Tapi untuk slide presentation ini saya akan campur dengan bahasa gado-gado, bahasa Indonesia dan bahasa Inggris. Pertanyaan dipersilakan boleh ditanyakan dalam bahasa Indonesia or in English. Oke, jadi kita akan bicarakan tiga konsep juga yang saya katakan tadi, inoculation theory, captology, dan perception AI. Baik, kita mulai dengan soal inoculation theory. Apa masalahnya? Masalahnya seperti saya katakan tadi, adanya infodemic, ya, adanya infodemic dan disinformation. Kalau information is empowering, disinformation is disempowering. Jadi ini bisa dilihat sendiri dan self-explanatory, tidak perlu lagi banyak saya cerita, hanya saya akan berikan salah satu saran di mana para pendidik, terutama bagi mereka yang mengajarkan ilmu psikologi, barangkali bisa lagi menggali konsep yang sudah ditemukan hampir 60 tahun yang lalu oleh William Maguire mengenai communication inoculation. Dia katakan, a theory of communication inoculation will demonstrate that vulnerability to persuasion could be prevented by belief immunization. Jadi diberikan vaksin agar mereka itu siap sedia dan bisa mempunyai critical mindset, critical assessment mengenai informasi ataupun message-message yang mereka terima dibombardet lewat WhatsApp, lewat Facebook, dan lewat macam-macam social media lainnya. Dan ini akan memberikan satu resisten terhadap persuasive influences yang kebanyakannya adalah fake ataupun hoax information. Nah, what do you do with this inoculation theory? Itu harus di-incorporate lewat public education. Tidak saja di level university, tapi juga di level sekolah dasar, sekolah menengah, ataupun di non-formal continuing education for all lewat curriculum reform yang harus mengcover hal-hal seperti criticalness and astuteness in communication processing, communication ethics, integrity, responsibilities. Tadi Profesor Monica sudah menyinggung hal ini sedikit. Harus kita juga berikan pendidikan mengenai netiquette in using and communicating digital and cyber media. Ada netiquette-nya. Virtues mengenai kearifan lokal, civic and values responsibility. Harus ada tanggung jawab. Semua orang sekarang bisa menggunakan sosial media, bisa memberikan informasi mengenai semua hal. Semua orang sekarang punya akses. Hanya permasalahannya di mana letak tanggung jawabnya. Ada yang kita sebutkan juga di bidang komunikasi, yaitu information filtering dan management dalam menerapkan prinsip dari inoculation theory. Jadi coba lihat lagi bukunya William Maguire dari Yale University, dia muridnya Carl Hovland, ya. Coba mungkin banyak teori-teori dari sana yang bisa diterapkan lagi untuk mencerdaskan bangsa dan masyarakat Indonesia menjadi critical communicators. Semua orang sekarang itu communicators, bukan saja mereka yang dididik di Fakultas Komunikasi. Perangkat lain yang diperlukan adalah cyber law education. Fakultas hukum kita dan fakultas komunikasi, fakultas sosial politik dan lain sebagainya harus juga mengincorporate materi mengenai cara-cara pencegahan ataupun regulasi atau regulation framework mengenai cyber law. Dan juga ya.
Pak Dokter, mohon maaf, waktunya tinggal 3 menit, Pak Dokter. Lalu kita sebelum kita beralih ke sesi tanya jawab, Pak Dokter.
Alright. Jadi saya akan bicarakan saja apa saja yang ada di slide ini agar nanti dipelajari sendiri karena ada di Dropbox ya. Jadi saya akan bicarakan saja key konsep daripada slides yang akan saya bagikan ini. Cyber security, cyber forensik juga merupakan bagian yang penting untuk diketahui di lembaga pendidikan kita. Ini juga mengenai slide mengenai kaptologi. Kalau ada yang mau lebih mengerti mengenai kaptologi, bisa dilihat di slide ini. Phone kita sebenarnya seperti slot machine, alat judi. Tadi saya sudah bicara mengenai infobesity, internet addiction, dan konsepnya ada di sini semua. Jadi bisa dilihat secara rinci nanti. Dan juga bisa dilihat lagi di Google. Ini summary daripada apa yang perlu kita ketahui mengenai kaptologi. Ada hook canvas-nya, ada trigger-nya, ada reward-nya karena diberikan reward yaitu dopaminnya, dan action-nya kadang-kadang positif ataupun negatif. Hook. Oke. Nah, yang terakhir adalah mengenai perception AI. Kalau kita lihat, ternyata China itu sekarang merajai pertarungan artificial intelligence. Lihat negara-negara lain ketinggalan jauh. Dan bagi yang tertarik, silakan baca bukunya Kai-Fu Lee mengenai AI superpowers. Kalau dekade 80 sampai 2000 itu made in China, dekade 2000 sampai 2015 adalah copy to China, yaitu China yang mengcopy. Sekarang dekade 2015 sampai 2030 kita yang mengcopy dari China. Ini masalah besar. Pertarungan seperti juga pertarungan sepak bola. Tahun 2013 skornya masih China 1, US 9 mengenai perception AI. Dan tahun 2018 skor sudah dimenangkan oleh China 6-4 dan diperkirakan dalam waktu 3 tahun lagi atau 2 tahun lagi China akan mendominasi Amerika di bidang machine learning dan deep learning menggunakan robotics ataupun artificial intelligence. China skor 8, Amerika skor 2. Oke. Nah, ini bisa lihat ini perusahaan-perusahaan yang sebelumnya copy from US, ini perusahaan-perusahaan startups yang di-inspired oleh Amerika, tapi belakangan ini China yang menginovasi dan sekarang kita memasuki dekade atau age copy from China. Kita yang copy atau globally mereka mengcopy dari China. Ini permasalahan besar dan kalau tidak percaya adanya robotics, adanya AI, ini job being replaced by automation, bisa lihat berapa angka pengangguran dalam waktu dekat ini. Dan kalau masih juga tidak percaya, Di Amerika sekarang robot sudah di-tax, dipajaki. Berarti dia merupakan threat yang luar biasa sehingga robot itu harus bayar tax. Karena banyak orang-orang yang sebelumnya membayar pajak tidak dapat pekerjaan, mereka tidak membayar pajak pada negara, akhirnya digantikan oleh robot, ya sekarang robotnya yang harus bayar pajak. Sekian, dan silakan dipelajari dan dicermati slides ini yang ada di Dropbox. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih banyak. Aplaus yang meriah buat Bapak Roni Adikarya PhD yang sudah menyampaikan materi yang sangat insightful sekali. Although I have a question, and if I might ask permission, I would love to ask my question in English. Can I do that?
Sure, you can do so.
Okay. Professor, since you are living and staying in the United States, and everything about technology was always related to Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, Stanford, and I am thrilled to wanting to understand why Stanford and Silicon Valley culture in Palo Alto are so hard to be replicated in other countries. And the reason why I ask this question is because recently our government has tried to create another Silicon Valley in Indonesia, which located in West Java and will be included Bandung Technology University and also the Science Technopark in Cimahi, West Java. And based on what I read in every essays regarding Silicon Valley and Stanford University, it is always talking about the culture. And I believe that it is related to psychology. And I think we can discuss a little bit more about that, Professor, since you've been staying in Silicon Valley, and I would love to know more your opinion regarding that.
Okay, I can be a little partial because in order to explain Silicon Valley, you need to understand Stanford, because the base of Silicon Valley is Stanford. Stanford University, especially the engineering and the business school and the psychology department where Bandura is there, Nathan McCoby, there are really a lot of well-known psychologists there. They're supplying the manpower, the SDM-nya dari Stanford. Okay, most of those people who run Silicon Valley 20 years ago were all graduate students at Stanford. Silicon Valley was developed by Professor Thurman of Stanford. So you need to understand this kind of symbiosis. So that's one thing. When you say it cannot be replicated, it is not entirely true. Why? Because now there's a reverse brain drain. Whereas before, say my generation, people who studied there, they never go home. They used to be the coolies of Silicon Valley. Now they become the bosses of Silicon Valley. The Indians, the Chinese, the Koreans, the Japanese, when I started my study at Cornell back in 1970s, all the Asians were low-ranked researchers. Now they become not only executives, they are becoming 30%, 40%, they are the owners. Okay. Now, what happened now? What happened is most people from big universities, not only Stanford, but also MIT, all the technological-minded schools, STEM school, they went back home. Where do they go? They go to Tsinghua University. They go to Bangalore, right? They go to Korea. Most people are returning back home. This is what's happening, the younger generation. And now you can see how many people are making a lot of not only the innovation, but the application. You know, many people, I don't have time to discuss this, but people like Nadiem Makarim, he studied at Harvard But he returned, and many people like that. So there is a new trend in the last 5-10 years. Indonesia will have to be very proud. Indonesia is one of the few Asian countries that has produced unicorns and decacorns more than anybody else. It is not Malaysia, it's not even Singapore, not even Thailand, it's Indonesia. We have many people. What you're saying, to a certain extent, is true. But again, what is important, you have to have a base, and the base is the university. The university that will produce those, supplying those people. That's very important. And of course, you're right, culture. There is an invisible college, there's a networking, right? And they are not only engineers, they are not only computer guy. You go to Google, you apply for a job. If you're just a computer programmer, they don't want you. They want unusual people, people with a different way of thinking, out of the box, right? So now, that's why I mentioned earlier, what we need is a transdisciplinary mindset.
Thank you so much, Professor. And I would love to also acknowledge our Dean of Faculty, University of Pancasila, that has already started the Cultural of Business Psychology. One and only faculty that has business psychology and culture is University of Pancasila. I would like to say hello to Dr. Sonny Suharso. Hello, sir.
Thank you, Nabila. Thank you, Pak Roni. I think inspiring presentation and lecturing for us, but also it's a challenge for us how to develop the human resource development, human resource like a lecturer and also supporting academic staff, how to change the mindset from conventional activities to digital mindset, to transforming the culture also, technological and digital culture, I think. But Nabila, if you don't mind, there is Ibu Dini Chokro. Would you please to refer to her? She has one or two questions for you and also for Dr. Roni. Please.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, I would like to give the microphone to Mrs. Dini Chokro. She is one of the best lecturers inside University of Pancasila, and she's also known as a previous ambassadors for Ecuador. I would love to say hello. Hello, Mrs. Dini Chokro. How are you? How are you, ma'am?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. Wow, Pak Sonny, you just shot me. Yeah, I'm really what to call it? Yeah, I'm really interested in your presentation, Pak Adikarya. Pak Adikarya, yeah.
Roni, just call
Roni
Roni.
Adikarya, yeah. It's really a very futuristic point of view that now we have to start thinking about that, because if not, it will be a damage to humankind if we still think with the old-fashioned style. Yeah, we have to go through that. I just want to know, what do you mean by captology? What shall we do here in Indonesia if you want to work with the captology things? Because you said that it is one of the remedy to be implemented if we want to face the 5.0 technology, and then with the progress of the technology and everything. So what would we do in Indonesia in the situation that we are facing? Because here in Indonesia is very heterogeneous.
Good,
it's very hard.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Question. This is what I'm going to say. I'm going to be very blunt and very honest. And the prognosis is a little grim, okay? If we are not willing to take the risk. Captology is a new psychological field that not many faculty of psychology have even heard of It's not only in Indonesia. I was in Poland. I was in Bulgaria, Romania, in Germany at Wismar, and even universities there, they never heard of what captology is. But besides, of course, those people who developed that, I've given you in the presentation, in the slides, all the evidence that there are a lot of work at Stanford. They have been doing that. But if it's not done in the universities, especially faculty of psychology, you know where it's going to be developed? It's in the companies. It's in the startups. They're already doing it. They started using intuition. They started not with a theory. They did it. So Professor Fogg, for instance, study the young people, the way they develop the thing. So when you say, yes, we need to change our thing, there's three things I want to leave this meeting with. One is, forget generation like me. It is wrong for Pak Sony to invite people like me. I'm passé. I'm already a storyteller. I study at top university. I was a PhD from Stanford. But what I studied in Stanford now is irrelevant. I can speak like this because I learned from people who are below 30 years of age and who are not graduates. But there are people who are struggling with their startups. I learned from companies that is having Zoom price in Wall Street. That's the best result. If the company can make so much money and successful in the marketplace, there must be something right. And what is it that makes it right? What kind of training do their staff have got to study? So learn from the young people, learn from the startup. I remember Pak Sony invited me long time ago, right, Pak? Ingat nggak? Waktu ada anak-anak muda itu, saya tuh belajar di tempat incubation mereka. Saya tuh jadi murid mereka. Katanya saya mentor. Padahal saya yang belajar akhirnya.
Siap.
These are the kind of mentality we need to change. Why we learn from all those established, I'm sorry, with all due respect to professors. They know about business of 20 years ago.
Yes, I agree. I really agree about
know
that.
The business of 20 years from now. It is not only I didn't include it, but it's just the fact that the generation gap between parents and children. Now we're talking about the professor will need to learn, need to listen. Right? They shouldn't be talking, but they're irrelevant now.
Yes.
Another one. Ms. Nabila asked me why Stanford and Silicon Valley is very difficult to replicate. You know why? Because Stanford now, the measurement of success is not to produce graduates who can get a job, but graduates who can create jobs.
Yes.
So the curriculum has to be changed. It's different. Now, right? Internship, bologna. Internship means you be creating followers. If you send people for internship, you learn from those people who are already passé. You want niche. You want niche. You want somebody with new idea. You want pathfinders. You want trailblazers. And that's why I said Elon Musk, right? Who are our heroes these days? This is Elon Musk, the Jeff Bezos, right? So again, earlier we talked about creating a mental mental set that is different.
Mental model.
The kind of thing that we need to be thinking differently, right? If we are only thinking about the past, and therefore another principle. What is the best method to learn these days? Because the technology, the subject matter is changing so fast, you cannot keep up.
Yes,
What
exactly.
to do? The best way is to know how to learn.
Exactly.
How to learn.
How
and
to
more
learn.
importantly,
Yes.
how to unlearn.
Mm-hmm.
How to unlearn. Hapus nih.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, the unlearn is more difficult than the learn. And finally, how to relearn. So those are the three things you need to change. And university will need to be that. Otherwise, they become dinosaurs.
No.
I'm sorry. I hope maybe some people cannot sleep tonight.
No, but that is very important, Pak Benny, karena because we don't know how to learn here. That's what I observe. Yeah, Indonesian people doesn't know how to learn, doesn't know how to unlearn. They think that they are the only people who is very smart, and we have to listen to them. While everything changes so fast. That's why I give appreciation to my dear friend Pak Dekan Psikologi UP. Actually, I'm very busy today, but I couldn't help myself to listen. I was here from the morning until now. I went out for a while because I have meetings. I come back again because I was really interested with all the subjects, and I really appreciate Pancasila. I think this is a very good step here, a very good step for us to try to think more hard how we can produce students who knows how to learn. Exactly. Not as a follower. Yes. Because in life, if we don't know how to learn, we'll never be succeeded. That I really appreciate. Very good, Pak Sony. Very good.
Thank you, Mbak Dini. Terima kasih.
Pak Adikarya.
Terima kasih.
Bikin lagi pertemuan seperti tempo hari.
We are very pleased to welcome you in our discussion.
Ajak anak-anak startup tempo hari. Itu hebat.
Gimana, Prof?
Langsung ke ada pertanyaan dari Mbak Penny Nabila.
Iya, tadi saya sudah melihat ada pertanyaan di chat box dari Universitas Atma Jaya, Mbak Feni Handayani. Silakan, boleh dinyalakan mikrofon dan kameranya.
Itu dia, Din.
Aku off dulu ya dari webinarku ya nanti. Jadi aku taruh dulu di sini tulisannya. Nanti aku off dulu ya sebentar ya. Izin.
Mbak Feni?
Kalau nggak ada, dibacain aja mungkin.
Oke, baik. Mungkin akan saya bacakan aja pertanyaannya. Di sini Mbak Penny dari Unika Atma Jaya bertanya mengenai beragamnya pace kinerja dan luasnya Indonesia. Mohon pencerahannya bagaimana membuat perubahan digital, terutama dalam bidang psikologi, industri, dan organisasi, serta pendidikan menjadi terakses merata, embracing the changes. As we previously discussed that we are having a problem of inequality happens everywhere, and we want to have no more generation gap or no more information gap, no more economic gap. We want to have equality spread across the nation. So in order to do that, I think we need a strategy. So we would love to know, how do you think regarding these issues?
Okay, there are two gaps that I mentioned in my presentation and my speech also earlier. One is the digital gap itself consists of two things. One is the infrastructure gap, right? That people do not have the facilities, they cannot afford buying all the equipment. You need to have phones, you need to have internet capabilities, etc. So that's the first thing you need to invest in. And I think Pak Menteri already mentioned, and I think there is already a serious effort to upgrade facilities to make it. Only equal access, the inequitability is a problem, right? So what do you do? Well, in many countries, there is what we call a Robin Hood financing method. In other words, is cross subsidy, okay? So that's why government will need to understand that private sector can be brought in, but they need to also, before they even get the benefit, they need to invest also, and therefore there should be some kind of formula in which there is a cross subsidy and there's a Robin Hood financing. Okay, I cannot explain, but you can go to Google and some maybe I'm too old of a generation to talk about the Robin Hood story. Okay, I see Pak Dekan, Pak Sony mesem-mesem.
I like the terminology, Pak Roni. Terminologinya luar biasa. Robin Hood financing.
Robbing from the rich and then giving it to the poor. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing is there is another gap. And that's more important than infrastructure. And that is the digital literacy gap. Most people are not digitally literate, even though now everybody is using the phone. But do you know? They only know to send. They don't know how to use the features. They do not know how to copy paste. They do not know how to attach files. They do not know how to find photographs. Basic things like that. Basic thing about technological know-how will need to be educated not only to students, to everybody in the society. But who is going to do that? Non-formal education, should they be going back to campus? Some of the campuses, they're already having continuing education program, and that's making money. I don't know, Pancasila ada continuing education tidak untuk semua orang, untuk seniors lah, untuk ibu-ibu rumah tangga lah, to help them. Some people, old people, they cannot survive nowadays without a phone. They cannot talk to their grandchildren anymore. Right? There's a stress, but they need to have some basic knowledge about software, downloading, uploading, navigating the internet. There are some basic things. And if you cannot do that, you're blocked, you're cut off from the world. So that is the question. How do we create access? Well, one is through education, not only through curriculum, but general basic education will have to incorporate. I'm glad to hear Pak Menteri mention about various kind of school. Even the kementerian sekarang buka what do you call it? I'm not sure what it. Lembaga-lembaga pendidikan. Am I correct, Pak Dekan? Itu bukan yang Pak Menteri bilang? Ya, ada macam-macam itu. Ya, jadi terpaksa mereka, sebenarnya bukan fungsi mereka, itu fungsinya private institution atau universitas. Ya. Universitas, siapa bilang universitas hanya untuk degree program? Okay. Malah yang perlu itu bukan yang degree program sekarang nggak perlu degree lah. Ya.
Oke.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. It's very interesting discussion, and I would love to move the microphone next to the next question. Is there any next question? Ada pertanyaan lagi nggak dari peserta? Halo,
adik mahasiswa dari adik-adik mahasiswa mungkin.
Dari teman-teman mahasiswa boleh kalau yang mau bertanya langsung saja di unmute dan dinyalakan kameranya.
Tanya mereka, kalau ada pertemuan seperti ini, lebih baik narasumbernya dari startup seperti orang-orang seperti Tokopedia, dari Gojek. Apa dari profesor-profesor seperti saya? Tanya.
Iya. Atau dari Ibu Bo, Prof Bo mungkin ada yang mau ditanya atau Mbak Umi? Sudah Mbak Umi, ada yang lain-lain silahkan. Pakai bahasa Indonesia aja nggak apa-apa. Ya silahkan. Dari Mbak Sinta mungkin sebagai psikolog pendidikan, silahkan.
Tadi saya
Baik, selamat
iya.
sore. Baik, selamat sore,
Sorry Bu.
Pak Rani. Ini adalah sebuah presentasi yang sangat inspiring ya, dan membuka mata bagi kita semua, terutama di era digital yang kita terpaksa daring begitu ya. Memang kita sebenarnya sudah mempersiapkan beberapa model-model e-learning ya begitu, tetapi dengan pandemi ini kita dipush, kita terpaksa daring, mendadak daring begitu ya, kita dipush untuk bisa kemudian mengikuti alur teknologi yang ada. Memang tadi sebenarnya pertanyaan saya adalah bagaimana sih sebenarnya strategi dari negara-negara besar gitu ya untuk bisa tadi digital literacy begitu ya, digital literacy sampai ke golongan yang mungkin paling rendah, karena semua sekarang IoT gitu ya, Internet on Things kan semua gitu. Even saya bisa menyalakan lampu saya hanya dengan handphone begitu ya, lampu saya matikan dengan handphone gitu. Saya bisa buka blind di rumah saya dengan handphone, semua it will be IoT on everything begitu. Tapi tadi bahwa di Indonesia masih sangat banyak teman-teman yang even tidak bisa mengakses internet begitu. Nah, apa ya sebenarnya strategi yang paling in spite of infrastructure tadi yang sudah disampaikan oleh Kemenkominfo begitu ya Pak Joni Gelepati, tapi what kind of education yang seharusnya kita berikan kepada teman-teman agar literasi digital ini bisa menjadi lebih cepat, boosting our pengetahuan literasi digital ini, terutama pada teman-teman yang ada di daerah-daerah yang agak jauh dari infrastruktur yang baik gitu.
Baik, terima kasih Bu. Pertanyaannya penting sekali untuk mempersempit jurang daripada infrastructure gap ataupun literacy gap. The infrastructure gap sebenarnya tidak begitu sulit. Kalau saja ada political will dan ada financial will. Kalau saja misalnya asumsi yang digunakan adalah $1 yang diinvest untuk kesehatan, ya, bukannya untuk kuratif tapi prevention, public health, sama juga dengan $1 diinvest untuk infrastruktur internet, itu payoff-nya lebih besar daripada menginvestasi katakan saja di lembaga pendidikan tinggi, ya, di universitas level, ya. Kalau saya jadi policy makers, priority investasi saya dari uang $1 itu, ya, $1 tentunya kali bermacam-macam, itu di infrastruktur dan di pendidikan dasar, bukan di lembaga universitas. Itu yang pertama. Yang kedua, caranya adalah seperti saya katakan tadi, harus adanya cross subsidy atau Robin Hood financing, karena ini memerlukan kerjasama antara pemerintah, community based, dan juga swasta. Kenapa swasta harus ikut sertakan? Karena the payoff nantinya di kemudian harinya yang paling banyak akan mengecap keuntungan adalah lembaga swastanya, ya kan? Tapi mereka tidak ikut investasinya, capital outlay-nya itu tidak diikutsertakan. Jadi harus ada policy yang terintegrated. Tidak bisa Kominfo jalan sendiri, tidak bisa. Harus dengan Departemen Dalam Negeri, harus dengan keuangan. Mereka harus punya satu synchronized event, synchronized program. Kalau tidak, jalan sendiri-sendiri, tidak akan bisa sinkron. Nah, itu cara di tempat lain adalah dengan adanya policy tools dan policy guidelines yang jelas dan adanya strategi. Tadi Ibu minta tanya strategi. Strateginya adalah seperti itu. Dari level policy level. Karena tidak bisa hanya main guerrilla style di lapangan saja. Ini efeknya kecil sekali, hanya di satu komunitas. Jadi pilot project sana sini, tapi sporadik, tidak sistemik, tidak bisa nantinya adanya upscaling ke atas menjadi suatu institusi, institutional change yang merata. Ada lagi.
Terima kasih banyak
Terima kasih.
Tony dan Ibu Auli Grasinta, pertanyaannya bagus sekali. Dan tadi jawabannya juga bagus sekali ya, $1 of investment in infrastructure, in human, in healthiness, in human, and especially in people's well-being, it would be worth than $1 million net revenue or GDP in the next future. That's interesting. I lost my word, Professor, for that. It's such an honor for me to be jadi moderator untuk mendampingi Bapak sore ini. Dan
terima kasih.
Sepertinya karena pertanyaannya sudah tidak ada lagi yang masuk, mungkin saya izinkan untuk menyimpulkan sedikit Bapak dari diskusi kita kali ini, dan izinkan saya membacakan kesimpulan dalam bahasa Inggris karena baru pulang jadi masih agak kaku. So change is inevitable, and technology has allows us to turn scarcity into the abundance. So there is no other option than to create a collaboration, a triple helix innovation, as we all already know, which is government, communities, business, education, have to work together in order to achieve what we call Society 5.0 without any gap and any problems in the near future. It is very interesting discussion, and now saya bakal memandu untuk penyerahan sertifikat sebagai tanda penghormatan bagi Bapak Roni Adikarya, dan tanda terima kasih juga atas materi yang disampaikan sore ini. It is very juicy and wonderful discussion. I am very pleased to be your moderator, sir.
Thank you very much for your moderating.
So now I would love to give a certificate online sebagai penghargaan dari kami terhadap Bapak Roni Adikarya, PhD. Terima kasih Bapak.
Terima kasih. Terima kasih pada seluruh peserta dan juga narasumber dan panitia terutama yang sudah bekerja keras. Tentunya pimpinan dari Fakultas Psikologi dan pimpinan universitas. Terima kasih dan salam sukses. Salam Pancasila, merdeka.
Merdeka. Terima kasih Pak
Sebelumnya
Roni.
jangan meninggalkan dulu ruangan Pak, karena kita masih ada sesi foto bersama. Saya akan memimpin sesi foto bersama terlebih dahulu. Boleh dinyalakan semua kameranya dan berikan pose terbaiknya. Bapak Ibu hadirin peserta. Baik, sudah siap? Mohon maaf karena di sini sinyal saya sedikit buffer, jadi mohon diberikan aba-aba kalau sudah selesai fotonya ya. 1, 2. 1, 2. Baik.
Salam Pancasila. Salam Pancasila dong dia.
Salam Pancasila. 1,
Merdeka.
2. Salam Pancasila, merdeka. Dan demikian usai sudah kebersamaan kita kali ini dalam sesi bersama Bapak Dr. Roni Adikarya, PhD. I am honored to be your moderator, and it is very insightful and juicy conversation that we have today regarding the technology, the disruption areas about technology, and we hope that we can do the triple helix innovation in the near future and applied every single knowledge that we had from these seminars to the real practice. Now moving on, kayaknya saya mau menyerahkan kembali kepada MC